welcome back to the Kingdom Parenting YouTube channel where we talk about God's principles on raising godly seeds. My name is Oluwapelumi Newsong, and today we'll be looking at the lives of some women in the Bible to drive home the message of this video, which is parents are watchmen and custodians over their children's destinies. True, parents, our work is cut out. We are watchmen and custodians of our children's destinies. You know, we must have heard this said over and over again, that the children that the Lord has given to us have been given to us to steward, and we will give an account someday on how we have raised them, on how we have watched over them, on how we have trained them in the way that they should go. So, as watchmen, we must watch with our prayers, we must watch with our words, we must watch with our eyes, we must watch with our hearts, and we must watch with our actions. You know, watching implies doing so many things at the same time. You know, we watch with our time, we watch with our resources, you know, and talking about resources, we're talking of all resources, whether spiritual, physical, emotional, or financial. All our resources must be geared towards, you know, this assignment that God has given to us. In the Bible are some women that, you know, we can learn a tool from, you know, about watching and being on guard, you know, as being custodians over the lives of our children. And of course, we can learn from the inactions of some other mothers. You know, the Bible, you know, has a lot of guidelines spread across it, and you know, you can learn in a reverse manner. You can learn from, you know, someone who didn't do something, and then we know, of course, that we should do it, and then you learn from someone who did something and we know that we should do it. So first off is Jochebed. We all know who Jochebed is. Jochebed was Moses' mother. Of course, she was also the mother of Aaron and Miriam, but we'll be focusing, you know, this discourse on a motherhood, you know, as in regards to Moses. We all know that she had Moses in a very volatile time, you know, in Egypt. The Israelites had migrated to Egypt, you know, in the time of Joseph. Joseph had been sent ahead, you know, by God to preserve lives, and he was in Egypt for many years, and then a famine broke out, you know, that informed his father Jacob and all his brothers and their families, you know, migrating to Egypt, and they were there for many years. Of course, there was a prophecy. God had spoken to Abraham and, you know, told him of how there would be slaves, you know, in Egypt, but after a while he was going to deliver them. And you know, this prophecy, according to the prophecy, they were supposed to be there for 400 years, but they ended up being there, you know, for 430 years. And of course, but that prophecy was still standing. So we are told that, you know, the Israelites were in Egypt and they began to grow mightily, which became a threat for the Egyptians. And then the king, the Herod at the time, who we are told in the Bible had forgotten what Joseph did, you know, decided that the best way, you know, to like tame their growing number was to begin to kill male children that were born to them, you know, to reduce their might. And of course, Moses was born at this time. And the decree was that every male child that was born in Egypt at that time to the Hebrew women was to be killed. We are told in Exodus chapter 2, you know, how when Moses was born, and this was where, you know, I would say visionary parenting, you know, kind of started. We're told how when Moses was born, his mother looked. No, we're told that she saw that he was a beautiful child, and she hid him for 3 months. You know, one thing about seeing, before you see something, you must have looked. You know, seeing, you know, you look. They say eyes that see are common. They are many. Eyes that look are many, they are common, but eyes that see are very few. But before you see, you must look. So she must have looked, and she saw that it was a beautiful child, and then she decided this one is not going to go the way of the other male children had gone. And you know, I always, when I read that part of the Bible, I always see that she did not only see physically, she must have seen fulfillment of the prophecy. She must have seen a whole lot and decided that, look, this one is not going, you know, she is not going to die. She saw and she acted. You know, like I said earlier, her seeing went beyond physical. She looked and she saw a deliverer. She looked and she saw hope. She looked and she saw the fulfillment of the prophecy of the deliverance of the Israelites from bondage, and took action. She was not going to, you know, allow him go, as in the death was either that they were thrown in the Nile to be eaten by crocodiles or to drown, or that the midwives will snuff the life out of them, at birth. But she was not going to allow that. She was not, one could say, well, she had another son, Aaron, she had Miriam, why not? Why risk her life to do that? But it is worth risking. When you have a vision from God, it is worth staking your life for. It is worth, deciding that, look, I would love not my life until the end. I will stay with this. So from Jochebed, we learn what visionary parenting is. It's not just about looking. We must look and we must see. What do we see about our children? What has God told us? What are we doing? Are we running with, what He has told us to do? And then we'll see that this was something that was part and parcel of her. It was second nature. Even after hiding him for 3 months, and it seemed as if, she was at her wit's end, and then, she built an ark of bulrushes, put him there, placed him by the mile. She did not walk away. She placed a sister there, and, in another video, we'll be talking about, parent figures, we're talking about secondary parents and all that, but back to the discourse of today, we're talking about parents as, watchmen, as sentries, as gatekeepers, as custodians, of their children's destiny. So she kept him along the path, and still, she was watchful, through her daughter Miriam. She was still watchful, as to know what was going to happen, to the boy Moses. Of course, we know how the story ended. He grew up, he became the deliverer, he delivered the Israelites from Egypt, he led them through the wilderness, before Joshua took over and delivered them into the promised land. Another exemplary character is Mary, the mother of Jesus, highly favored woman, and we know many prophecies had gone ahead before the birth of Jesus, how He would come, how He would save, His people, how, his coming was for the rise and fall of many and all that. One thing that I like so much, that was said of Mary is in Luke 2:19, and it says that Mary kept all those things and pondered them in her heart. That is another way to watch. I said earlier, we watch with our words, we watch with our prayers, we watch with our heart. She didn't just hear them. Many times prophecies go. You may find yourself in a prophetic company and you're told that this child of yours is going to be this, 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 this. As a kingdom parent, as a parent, what do you do with those words? I always want to believe that, by saying that she pondered them in her heart, it means she interceded. As mothers, as parents, we do not only nurture in our womb, we do not only incubate babies, physical babies, we incubate dreams, we incubate vision. So I can just imagine that, what was said there means that she nurtured, everything that was said about him, and she kept praying. Of course, Jesus, the God of the whole universe, like, He was going to fulfill destiny anyway, but she kept them in our hearts. As parents, as kingdom parents, we are to stay with those words. We are not to cast those words aside and just see them as anything. Oh, it's been prophesied that my son is going to be a minister. What are we doing about it? We remember Anna, the mother of Samuel. She had made a promise to God that, look, give me a child, and when you give me this child, I'm going to lend him to you. She followed through with action. When the boy was weaned, she took him to the temple, where he grew, and of course, all the days of his life, it was in service to God. Back to Mary, like it was said of her, she pondered those things in her heart. And we remember that his first miracle at the wedding in Cana of Galilee, she set the stage. Who knows? Maybe she saw the details of how it was going to be, the exact day, the place, the location, the event. She knew it was going to be a wedding and all that. And she interceded and watched through the years. Well, remember, the Bible doesn't just mention things for mentioning's sake. We're told at the beginning of that story that, Jesus had been invited to a wedding. His disciples were there. His mother too was there. I am sure there is a reason. She must have been waiting. Probably she heard one day in the place of prayer, wedding in Cana of Galilee. She knew that it was very, very, it was a pivotal moment in Jesus' life. And probably she had another thing to do that day. She ensured that, she was there. And of course, that began his public ministry, and like we said, the rest is history. On the flip, we will look at the story of Hagar, the Egyptian slave of Sarah. That is Abraham's wife, by whom he had Ishmael. We know how that whole story went. Our mistress Sarah and Abraham could not have, children by themselves, and, being weary in waiting, Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to have, to make babies through her. So of course they had Ishmael, and I'll just say this, just so that we follow the story. So after Hagar saw that she was pregnant, she was with child, she began to despise mistress, and then, Sarah began to mistreat her, and she ran away from home. While on the run, an angel appeared to her and told her, you are with child, and gave her prophecies about the child. The child would be great, and so, the story is in Genesis, but the angel told her to go back home, and to submit to her mistress. But, everything with God happens, at the right time. Though she had run away then, there was still, some things that she needed, to learn. There were some things that Ishmael probably needed to still learn from his father to do. We remember that he was part of the people that were circumcised in Abraham's house when God said, every child born of your flesh and every slave you bought with your money should be circumcised. Ishmael was also circumcised, but there was going to be a time that he would be sent away. And the time came when Isaac, the child of promise, came. According to the word of God, the child of promise, Isaac, came. And then after Sarah weaned him, Ishmael, started mocking, ridiculing, and the Bible says it was scoffing at him. And then, of course, Sarah said to Abraham, like, look, the child of the bondwoman cannot, basically what she meant was, he cannot stay in the same house with Isaac, the child of promise. And, she told Abraham to send him away. Of course, it grieved Abraham. Now he had the child of promise, but then Ishmael was still, a child of from his loins, and like any parent, I don't think it would be a nice thing to want to send, your child away. And this brings a story to mind. I was at an event recently, where I was engaging the children, and a little boy answered one of my questions, and I was so impressed. I said, okay, because one of the things children usually ask me, like, Auntie Bellamy, can I come and live with you, and all that. So I said, okay, the gift I'm going to give to you, of course I was joking, is, you'll come and live with me and everything. And he said to me, no, I love living with my mom. That struck a chord with me. There are many children that are not safe in their homes, but he was emphatic. He didn't even try to be tactful or diplomatic about it. He told me, I love living, I love, I love living with my mom. So back to Abraham's story. Of course, no parent would want to send his or her word away, his or her child away, but the Lord told Abraham, do what, Sarah says to you. So Abraham had to, send her away. He gave her provision, gave her a skin of water, as we're told in the Bible, and bread and all that. And then she began to wander in the wilderness of Beersheba, as we're told. And then a time came, it seemed as if she was at her wit's end. The water was spent, and the little boy Ishmael was crying for water, and she concluded in her heart that he was going to die. Remember in Jochebed's, I'm trying to do a comparison, and I'm trying to compare and contrast here. In Jochebed's case, there had been a decree that the child was to be killed. Nobody had said that this child was going to kill, but Hagar gave up. She couldn't even try to look around. We'll see later in the story that God had to open her eyes to see the well of water, but she couldn't see beyond that moment. She gave up. She concluded that she was going to die. And another thing that always comes to mind when I read that part of the Bible is that she obviously forgot the promise she had been given by the angel when she first fled from her mistress, when Sarah began to mistreat her. He had given her a prophecy about the seed she was carrying, how that it would be great, and all that. But instead, she placed him under a shrub, as we are told in the Bible, and sat across from him at a distance. Remember, Jochebed looked and saw and decided that this boy Moses is not going to die. In her own situation, she put him at a distance from her, concluding already that he was going to die. So she said to herself, I'm not going to see him die, I'm not going to watch him die. But she had already seen him die. She didn't need to see the physical act of watching him, die, from thirst or starvation and all that. She had already given up in her heart. She put him away from her, forgetting the promise that had been given to her and all that. That's thankfully, I would always say the boy cried out and God heard his voice. And I'll pause here to pray that, all our children, may they know how to cry out to God by themselves. May they know how to go to God in prayer, and for me, I'm thankful to God for my parents. I remember back then, whenever we presented our school list, my dad would say, go and pray to God and ask him, to bless daddy, to bless mommy, so that we can provide this. They brought us up with that mentality, of not seeing things coming from humans but directly from God. Okay, back from my digression. So Ishmael cried out and God heard him. Thank God. And parents, is very instructive for us here. Let us teach our children how to pray, how to go to God in prayer. A time will come we will not be on the scene. They need to learn how to fight their own battles. They need to learn how to go to God in prayer. But of course, we know how the story ended. Ishmael also grew up to be great, but Isaac was the child of promise. Lastly is Samson's mother, the wife of Manoah. We're not told her name. She was also given the blueprint for her son's life, but we can say she failed. She didn't watch, because if we read the story carefully, we will see some lapses, even though it seemed as if Samson could be very persistent, when he needed something. The angel appeared to her in the field and told her she had been barren for many years, and told her that she was going to have a child. And the instructions started even from her. She was told not to take strong drink and not to touch the unclean, and also that when the baby came, it was going to be a Nazarene. No razor should go on his head. It was not to touch the unclean, and all that. But reading Samson's story, we'll see that he went against the grain of his destiny in every ramification. He drank strong drink at his wedding. He touched the unclean when he killed the lion, and then the other time he passed and saw honey coming out from it, and he went to scoop the honey and ate. He touched the unclean. He did so many things. He even touched the unclean in going to marry the Philistines. If we remember, the promise, the blueprint for his life was that he was going to be used by God to defeat the Philistines. Sadly, at the end of the day, the Philistines that he was supposed to defeat, defeated him, because he perished, in a whole field with Philistines. He was destroyed with them. We could have heard so many other great things of Samson, but his destiny went that way. I would say here, because his parents didn't watch. Fine, he was persistent. By the end of the day, they followed him to go and ask for the hand of his Philistine wife in marriage. Parents, we must be careful. What has God shown to us? What have we seen in the place of prayer? How are we steering it? Many times, we see parents saying, oh, because I don't want him to cry, because I don't want, and we allow children their way. Remember, we are the parents. We are the authority figures. We must stand our ground. Whatsoever God has said to us, we must grow in it. We must go with it. We must persistently and consistently, stay with that word and steer it to, manifestation, steer it to maturity. God is counting on us. We must stand at our duty post. If you know the duty of a watchman, it does not, a watchman would never leave the duty post. They keep going back and forth, watching in every corner, praying, correcting, training, modeling, mentoring, doing all those things that they need to do, instructing, correcting, discipling, disciplining. Parents, kingdom parents, I must say, regardless of external forces, regardless of whatsoever, seems to be happening around us, we must stay with what God has told us, because at the end of the day, we are going to give accounts. God bless you. Thank you for watching. I trust that this video has blessed you, and of course, if it has blessed you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Until we come your way again, Keep being a kingdom parent. God bless you and bye for now.